Today we're putting 5 high-proof wheated bourbons head-to-head in a blind tasting to see which one of these can come out as top dog in the world of wheated bourbon. Is it going to be one of those classics like Weller Antique or Weller Full Proof, or will one of the 2024 new releases be able to steal the spotlight? Well, in this video, I'm going to rate and review all 5 of these wheated bourbons and judge them on my 10-point rating scale, which I like to call the lightning counter. And in the end, we'll not only find out which one of these comes out on top, we'll also see what their scores are and if any of them can make my top 10 list for the best whiskeys of 2024. My name is Brandon Spinner. You have stormed yourself into the Whiskey Weather YouTube channel, and my motto here is that it is always whiskey weather. I am this close to 7,500 subscribers. So if you haven't done so already, I ask you to please hit that subscribe button below. And also, send this video to your best drinking buddy so you can help spread the knowledge of the Whiskey Weather YouTube channel. I did mention this is a blind review, so we're going to be doing these 5 blind samples of these bottles of bourbon. Bourbons that are on tap today. We've got Bardstown Bourbon Company's High Wheat Origin Series, Weller Antique 107, Maker's Mark, the Heart Release, Weller Full Proof, and Ben Holladay's Soft Red Wheat Rickhouse Proof. I did not do it on purpose, but they are also in proof order. 106, 107, 112, 114, and I believe 119.8. Yes. Ages, very similar. 6, unknown, 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 and then 6.5 years old. These 3 should be about the same age, ranging from 6 to 8 years old. And the prices are actually very similar as well. MSRP between the 4 or 5 of these range from $50 to about $70. So the value there, they should be okay. I mentioned that we'll be doing this on my 10-point rating scale, which I call the lightning counter, and that judges 5 different sets of criteria, starting with the nose, the palate, the mouthfeel, the finish, and then ultimately the value. As we'll be doing these blind, I'm going to be pouring these into 5 separate Glencairns. Of course, you can always get these Whiskey Weather Glencairns on my website or become a Patreon member. We're continuing to grow. And we are doing more and more barrel picks, and if you become a Patreon member, you get first access to all barrel picks. The latest barrel pick that just sold out, happy to announce, the Green River Full Proof, not Full Proof, Green River barrel pick. It comes in at 128.3 proof. Really proud of that. So, we've got all 5 of these, and as it is with blind, no clue which one is which. Alright, these are going to have to open up a little bit. Oh, this one's got to be one of the Wellers, just off the nose. If I had to guess right away, 3 and 5 are the Weller. That's just the first blush though, so we'll see. So on the nose, nose number 1 is very sweet. It does have a little bit of nail polish acetone to it, which that Old Fitzgerald, which I reviewed up here on the top right of your screen, did as well to start. But as it opened up, it got much, much better. So the nose on 1, starting to get those caramels and cherries. It's good, it's not amazing. I'm going to keep going back and forth. That one's a little more muted. That's definitely got to be a Weller, because I get that grapey Buffalo Trace that I get on most of those bottles. Yeah, number 3 and 5 to me, definitely the Weller. Which one's which though? So 1's starting to open up. There's some chocolate to that, some caramel. The nose is good. I'm not going to say it's great. I'm going to go with a 1.3. So the 1.3 on the nose. Oh, now it's really starting to open up. Maybe I judged that a little too early. It's starting to get grapey nose as well. We'll go with 1.4. It's good. It's not great. I would hope for more. Next up. Oh yeah, when you go 1 to 1. All right. There's some there, but not a whole lot of depth. To me, that would be more of a maker's profile. There's a little bit of earthy tones to it. I get a little bit of grass, some hay, some chocolate to it. A little bit of that mocha. And I believe this was supposed to have some of that chocolate. I don't get maple out of it, which makes me question whether or not it's the maker's. It's good. It's not the most amazing pour, but it's decent. We're going to go with a 1.3. So 1.4, 1.3. The next step would be the mouthfeel. It's warm. And it's got a cinnamon leather after finish, which I've been mentioning in some of my previous videos. Not the biggest fan of, because I think it does tend to get a little bit too cinnamon red hots at the end and overpower. This does that. So the mouthfeel, we're going to go with a 1.3. And then the finish on that, I'm going to go with a 1.2. There's some flavor there, but that cinnamon and the leather really come out, and it really takes over towards the end. Not a huge fan of it, but overall, not bad. So between those four scores, 1.4, 1.3, 1.3, we're sitting at a 5.2 out of 8 so far. At the end, I'll throw the value on this once I know what it is. But for now, we're going to just rate these on the 8-point scale to see which ones flavors and all that come together. The values should be very close. If this was a $70 bottle, I would say probably looking at a value right around 1.3. If this was a $50, it's probably about 1.5, just from what I get out of it. So that's what I'll do. 1.3 or 1.5, depending on what the price is on that. Because I know that all 5 of these fall within that range. So sample number 2. This is opened up much nicer. This is earthy tones. Like the wheat comes through, not as corn forward. It's muted. Yeah, not as flavorful when it comes to sweet notes. This is more of like a grainy note. My guess, if I had to guess, would be Ben Holladay off the first thought. But it's good. It's like not amazing. There's some caramels that come through. Some of the sweetness is there, like an orange sweetness to me. There's a lot of flavor there though on the palate. Wow. On the nose, I'm going to go with a 1.3 on the nose. It's not as flavorful as number 1 on the nose, but I think that palate is much better. It's sweeter. That orange that I mentioned on the nose does come through on the palate. There's those caramels as well as a little bit of chocolate. Yeah, 1.3 and 1.6. The mouthfeel is definitely buttery, more of a buttery and oily mouthfeel, which I like. It coats the mouth better. I really wish that nose was better. And it's starting to open up. All right, I'm going 1.4 on the nose. So 1.4, 1.6. These are starting to seem similar. It's not as grassy or earthy. I haven't got a whole lot of oak out of either of these so far either. Mouthfeel on that. Oh, I love that buttery. Just coats the mouth. 1.7. Yeah. The way it coats the mouth is just, it engulfs the mouth and it's warm, but it's not overpowering. And the finish itself, way better than number 1. Number 1 has that just cinnamon red hots finish that overpowers. This is still flavorful. Caramels, the oak, this is where I really get the oak out of this. is that second. Yeah. Finish is a 1.5. So 1.4, 1.6, that's 3, 4.7, and a 6.2? No, that can't be right. Yeah, 6.2 out of 8 so far. If this was $50, I would give this a value of a 1.6. If this was $70, I would give this a value probably closer to about 1.5. So, for those purposes, that's what the value is on that. Diving into number 3, actually, I'm going to rinse my palate. Alrighty. I want to know what your favorite wheated bourbon is. Drop that in the comment section below. And as I mentioned, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so. That's going to bother me and probably will bother you through the rest of the way. I do have a Patreon group, and the next purchase is a new light to help that stop from happening. But we're continuing to try to grow this channel. You can join the Patreon in the group below. Oh, this is definitely one of the Wellers. The nose is delicious. Grape. Caramels, very sweet, a little bit of chocolate, but there's not a whole lot there. Very pleasant nose, probably the best of the 3 so far. I'm going 1.7 on sample 3. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of flavor there on the palate. Or at least compared to the first 2. Grape caramels, very sweet. There's a little bit more oak to that. I apologize for the flashing light. A little bit more oak to that. Overall, yummy. I wish there was a little bit more depth to it. It kind of falls flat to me. I'm going to go with a 1.2 on the palate. There's still some good flavors to it. I was just hoping for more, especially from the nose to this. Mouth feels pretty thin as well. It's got some legs on the glass, so I would have expected it to coat the mouth a little more, but there's some oak to it, but on the mouthfeel, I'm going to 1.2 as well. So we're sitting at a 4.1 out of 6 so far on the points. The finish is good. Again, it's not wonderful. Gets cinnamon red hotsy again. A little bit more leather, some oak there as well. We're going to go with a 1.2 again. So that's 1.7, 1.2, 1.2. If this is $50, we're going with probably a 1.4 on the rating scale. If this is $70, we're probably going with a 1.2 as well. So that's either a 6.7 or a 6.5. Let's go on to sample number 4. Ooh, that nose is lovely. It's got a little bit of that acetone on it. The grains are there. It's not the best nose of the 4 so far, but it's certainly the most with the most depth to me. There's oak, getting grassy again. Not fresh cut grass, but more of a hay field. There's some caramel. And then a little bit of sweetness, not as orangey. But I like that. It's a 1.5. It's hard to put my finger on exactly what it is, but I just know that it's pleasant. 1.5, very good nose. Would hope for a little bit more sweetness, but that's my critique on it. Starting to get like a sweet tarts sweetness out of it. Alright, maybe 1.6. We're going 1.6. I've done that a couple times. Yeah. Okay. very caramel and earthy. Honestly, the palate, I think, is a little worse than the nose was. It's like a gum ball as the middle of the palate. A lot of caramels. Vanillas are there. Nowhere near as cinnamon on the back end. There's some oak. A gumball would be probably what I would mention on the back end, like one of those big gumballs you get out of the gumball machine, which I don't really get on the nose. Maybe some of that sweet tart sweetness, but okay, vanilla's coming in. Mouth feels pretty good. Really coats the mouth. Gonna go palate, probably 1.3. Would hope for more, but it's not awful. And then on the mouthfeel, we're gonna go with a 1.5. That 1.5, it coats the mouth. There's a lot of warmth, but it's not overpowering. You get a little bit of a tingle to it, but really not bad. So 1.6, 1.3, 1.5. We're sitting at 4.4 so far. And the finish. Got some citrus there. It's good. The finish itself, a little bit of that cinnamon. The oak is there. That gumball really comes through, which is a little weird, but it's not off-putting. I'm going to go with a 1.4 there. So we're sitting at a 5.8. When it came to a price point of $50, I'd say probably a 1.5 on the value. If it came to $70, probably going with a 1.3. So overall, that would be, I think, a 7.3 or a 7.1 on the rating scale. So let's dive into number 5 and see what we got here. Oh, this is delicious on the nose. This is probably the best nose of them all. Grassy. A little mocha-y, sweet and grapey, and then that hayfield. Yeah, this is caramel, grape, very sweet. This is delicious. Probably the best nose. We're going to go with a 1.8. Nah, I think I overdid it. 1.7. I got a little too excited from the other 4. So 1.7, clearly the best nose. And I personally think it's probably Weller Antique. That'd be the guess. I will say for all of these being higher proof pours, none of them really blew me away to give it away as it's 119 or 106. I need to rinse my palate. Let's restart this all over again. Alright. Yeah, the nose is the best, 1.7. This has a little bit of that Old Fitzgerald VVS nose to it, without that acetone. It's good. It's not quite the VVS, but it's close. So 1.7. Palate. Yeah. That's good. Overall, really coats the mouth well. So I know I jumped the gun there with the mouthfeel. The flavors, there's the caramels, the vanillas. This is a classic bourbon with a wheated sweetness to there, but it's got a little bit of a funk to the sweetness, if that makes sense, which is good. The mouthfeel is good. There's not a whole lot of cinnamon on the back end. There's some present with that leather there to me, but it's not overpowering. It's more of it's a grouping rather than it's trying to take over. Like if it was the group project, it's where everybody gets a say rather than the one kid who is literally doing all the work, which would be the cinnamon and the leather that I think usually takes over. Yeah. 1.5 on the palate. Mouthfeel is 1.6. And the finish is a 1.5. So we're looking at 3.3, 6.3 before that. When we look at the value, $50 value is 1.6. When we're looking at a $70 value, probably looking at a 1.4. So we're anywhere between a 7.9 or a 7.7. All in all, I'm going to say number 5 is probably my favorite of the 5. If I had to venture a guess, it would. I'm going to guess. I'm going number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. That would just be the guess. I'm going to write down what I think the guesses are so I can at least remember. So number 1 I think was the Makers. Number 2 I think was the Ben Holladay. Number 3 was Weather Foolproof. Number 4 I believe was the Bardstown Bourbon Company. And then number 5 I feel like is OWA. I will say this does probably have the higher of the proofs between the two thoughts of what I thought the Weathers were. But this one coats the mouth better. All in all, I'm going with number 5. So, it has been sealed. Let's see. What is what? All right. Number 1 is Maker's Mark. So number 2 is Ben Holladay. I was 2 for 2. Number 3 is Weller Antique. Number 4 is the Bardstown. And then number 5 is the Weller Foolproof. And when we take a look at the entire scores, Weller Foolproof comes in with a score of 7.9. So 7.9 is the winner of the Weller Foolproof. Second then would be the sample number 2, which is the Ben Holladay soft red wheat Rickhouse proof. Number 3 score coming in would then be sample number 4. It's 7.3 on the rating scale. Number 4 is the Weller Antique. And number 5, in dead last, the Maker's Mark Heart Release. So, Bardstown and the red Rickhouse, the soft red wheat Rickhouse proof, both better than the Weller Antique, which is not something I thought I was going to say today. And honestly, personally, I thought the Weller Foolproof might actually fall down into the 3 or 4 spot out of all of this. Overall, very blown away by these scores, and I think you might be as well. And as you can see on the screen, the Weller Foolproof, this is not a this year release. This is from a couple of years ago. As you can see, I have done a little bit of work on the bottle. But yeah, wow. Comparative to earlier releases, I would have thought that the Bardstown would be a little bit higher up on the scale, but it's coming in at 7.3. That's a top 20 bourbon so far of 2024, I believe. And we're going to have that video coming up a little bit later on this year. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on that. The winner of all of this, I did not expect this, Weller Foolproof is the winner. And then second, in a close third, we go second, Ben Holladay Soft Red Wheat Rickhouse proof, and then the Bardstown Bourbon Company High Wheat Origin Series, Weller Antique, and then the Maker's Heart Release. So if you don't believe me, there it is, right there. 1 Maker's, 2 Holladay, 3 Weller Antique, 4 Bardstown, 5 Weller Foolproof. Big shout out to Allie Martin at The Good Drama. Thank you to her for setting this blind up. You can get these Glens as part of the Storm Chaser group on the Stormfront, which is what I call the Patreon, or my YouTube membership, which you can also hit that join button below. As we move on into 2025, my goal is not only to make it to 15,000 subscribers, my goal is to also put out 6 to 8 barrel picks. I already have one in tow for January. Hasn't been announced yet, but Patreon members will be the first to get it. And let's just say it's a barrel pick that a lot of people have been trying to get their hands on, especially here in Northern Kentucky. So if you do want a part of that, or you just want to be part of a really cool community, the Stormfront over at the Patreon group or the YouTube membership, go check that out. Hope you enjoyed this video. I do know that there were a couple mistakes when it came to the lighting and the video. I apologize, but I do want to thank you, each and every one of you, for giving me your time here for the last 25 to 30 minutes. As I mentioned here on the channel, it is always whiskey weather. I want to thank each and every one of you, not only for watching, but if you've made it this far, you're probably one of my loyal supporters. Thank you for making 2024 an amazing year. I will be putting out my top lists of 2024 here within the next couple of weeks, as I still have a few more bottles and bourbons to review. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, smash that like button below, and send this to your best drinking buddy, as we're trying to make the Stormfront something big. I know I'm not Baruzel, but would one day love to be that big of a channel. So please hit that subscribe button below. And if you did enjoy this video, I'm hoping to do a lot more of these blinds and different reviews, not only in lives, but also on different videos as we move on into the new year. So you can check out some of my other bourbon ratings right there on the top right of your screen. As I always end these videos, I say it the same way. Remember, it is always whiskey weather. Just please remember to drink safe and drink responsibly. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers out.